All right. We head to the AFC West. Gonna kick things off here with the Kansas City Chiefs. So the Chiefs made some moves defensively this offseason. They brought in safety Tyron the Honey Badger Matthew. They traded for Emmanuel Agba with the Browns, a defensive end. They traded with the Seahawks to bring defensive end Frank Clark in. They traded with the Jets to bring in linebacker Darren Lee. They signed defensive end Alex Okafor. They brought in cornerback Rashad Breeland and linebacker Damian Wilson. They did trade away a defensive end in D. Ford. Stevie Nelson left during free agency, and they traded safety Eric Murray away. Also, defensive end Justin Houston left in free agency. Now, they suffered a heartbreaking loss in overtime to the Patriots in the AFC Championship last year. They have one of the most electric offenses in football. Unfortunately, their Achilles heel all season long was how poor the defense was. Now, as I just mentioned, they made a lot of moves defensively in an attempt to improve. A lot in the front seven and a few in the secondary. I think having Tyrann Mathieu in the secondary will be helpful. He's really that, he plays that kind of center field role out there in the secondary. So, like I said, they had an electric offense. The one thing I will say is I expect some regression from Pat Mahomes. So he threw for 50 touchdowns last year. It's only been done 2 other times in football. Tom Brady did it in 2007, where he threw exactly 50. Now, the following year, he was hurt and he threw 0 touchdowns. The year following, he threw 28. Then you have Peyton Manning. He threw 55 in 2013, and in 2014, he followed it up with 39. I believe that Pat Mahomes will probably throw for about in the low 40s, probably somewhere around 42. I don't see him reaching 50 again. He had a lot of those, what has become popular in the NFL, where you run that jet sweep and you have the touch pass from the quarterback to the wide receiver coming across the formation. It counts as a pass. They did a lot of that in the red zone. They did a lot of throwing to the running backs in the red zone. I don't see that happening as often as it did. Offensively, obviously they have Tyreek Hill, who is an outstanding football player. He had some issues this offseason. He will not face a suspension. But he has a track record of this going back to college, of just having off the field issues. You hope he can stay on the field. They also drafted Mecole Hardman. At the time when he was drafted, it was still up in the air whether or not Tyreek Hill would get suspended or not. He was, for lack of a better term, the Tyreek Hill replacement. Now, he doesn't have to fill that role, but he's just another deep threat to add to an already great offense. I think another place they will see some drawback offensively is at running back. So Damian Williams came in and filled in nicely at the end of last year. He's not nearly as talented as Kareem Hunt, who was there early in the season. I don't feel like he can be that productive the entire season. Granted, again, it's going to be a great offense still. Excuse me, sorry. I don't have faith in it. Plus, you got the regression of Patrick Mahomes. I think another thing is I don't know how much the defense is honestly going to improve. It was one of the worst in football last year. I do have them still being obviously a good football team with that offense. I have them going 11-5 in winning the division. Let's hear what predictions you got. Let's hear them. Feel free to throw them in chat. All right, on to the LA Chargers now. They will forever be the San Diego Chargers in my eyes. They will be bringing in, they brought in, quarterback Tyrod Taylor. Brought in linebacker Thomas Davis. Brought in defensive tackle Brandon Mabin. Their only real major departure was wide receiver Tyrell Williams. The Chargers were very quiet this offseason. Didn't make very many moves. Now, what threw the Chargers into the front of discussion is Melvin Gordon deciding to hold out. Melvin Gordon is in the 5th-year option of his rookie deal. It's a team option. He is one of the best running backs in the league and is obviously underpaid based on that rookie deal. He has refused to show up to camp. He said he won't show up until he has a new deal, and he's asked to be traded. The Chargers have come out and said that they won't trade him. And I don't see the Chargers making a deal to extend him either. Because of that, at running back, they're going to have a big void. Austin Eckler, he's been the number 2 there for a while. He's been more of that pass-catching, change of pace back. And then Justin Jackson, who will be going into his 2nd year. He got some limited work at the end of last year when Melvin Gordon was dealing with some injuries. He definitely looked good. I think the combo of those two will be just fine for the Chargers, although it'll still be a downgrade from having Melvin Gordon there. Now, I think Melvin Gordon will come back at some point. I don't know the exact date, but I believe it's somewhere around like week 8, week 10, in that range, where he will have to report to be able to get credit for the season to become a free agent. Now, if he doesn't show up at all, he doesn't gain a year towards his contract and towards free agency. And if he doesn't gain that, then he's just going to be in the same situation next year, where he isn't getting paid because he's not showing up for games. And every day at training camp he misses, he's subject to a $40,000 fine. So for not showing up, the Chargers can be fining him, and he's not getting paid. That's why at some point I expect him to show up mid-season, do the minimum amount of time he has to with the team, get his year of free agency, and then test the free agency market next season. It's a little different from the Lev Bell situation last year, where Lev Bell was franchise tagged and he just refused to sign his franchise tag deal. So he wasn't getting fined. Now, granted, he wasn't getting paid either, but he wasn't facing fines and he was still going to be a free agent. And basically after that season, the Steelers didn't franchise tag him again, as they would have been in the same situation yet again. And it worked out for him. He got paid a lot of money from the Jets. The Chargers are going to have a pretty solid defense. They have one of the best pass rushing combos in football with Joey Bosa and Melvin Ingram. The one issue has been Joey Bosa's health. But when both of them are on the field, they are a problem for most offensive lines. They still have Keenan Allen at wide receiver. He's been dealing with some injuries. I think he'll be fine good to go week 1. I don't think they're going to miss much losing Tyrell Williams. I think just you'll see a bigger role from Mike Williams and from Travis Benjamin. Tyrell was a real deep threat. Travis Benjamin fits that role perfectly. Mike Williams is just a red zone machine. I believe he had 10 touchdowns last year. Wouldn't be surprised if you see that again. I don't think you'll see much of a drop off from Phillip Rivers. I think he's still got a few good years left in him. Now, again, I expect the Chargers to be good. I think they're going to miss Melvin Gordon more than they think. I think they're going to go 10-6, which is a just fine record. Unfortunately, though, I don't think 10-6 is going to be good enough to get a playoff spot. Chess pieces? We're eating chocolate chess pie. I'm not sure what I've missed in chat going over the Chargers, but it feels like it's entertaining, so I'm going to scroll back here a little bit. A lot of steaks at hand. Okay, we're talking about steaks, and then we jump into pies. Chocolate pie. Wait, chocolate chess pie is terrible. I'm not sure what a chocolate chess pie is. Chocolate pie sounds pretty delicious, though.
I said terribly good.
Oh, terribly good. Okay, I can't read. If you didn't already know, if you didn't know me personally, I struggle with the reading sometimes. A steak pie. Sounds pretty good. Yeah. You don't want to eat chess pieces. Yeah, okay. Yeah, yep. Gotta get some quality education in high school. Yep. All right. Moving on to the Oakland Raiders, or what will soon be. Thanks for the follow, Basil Brush. The Oakland Raiders, or what will soon be the Las Vegas Raiders, if they ever get that stadium built. So their big move of the offseason was they traded for Antonio Brown. Gave up not much in draft picks, honestly. That being said, that has created quite a headache, and we'll talk about that in a little bit here. They brought in offensive tackle Trent Brown, wide receiver Tyrell Williams, and safety LaMarcus Joyner. Their departures, they had Jared Cook, their tight end and leading receiver last year, left. And then they lost guard John Felicino. That sounds about right. So the Raiders, they had a ton of draft picks after trading Khalil Mack and Amari Cooper away last season. And they came in with a lot of big money moves and big trades. And there's a lot of high hopes as John Gruden enters year number 2 of that old 10-year, $100 million contract. And it looks like it's been a bit of a mess. The Antonio Brown saga with the helmet has been baffling. And to top it all off, Hard Knocks has been there to film it all. The Raiders are really just a hot mess, honestly. So it all started when Antonio Brown got frostbite on his feet from a cryo chamber. I'm probably butchering the word to that. I guess it's just like a deep freeze for the muscles. He didn't wear the proper feet. I don't know, socks or shoes, whatever's required to be in there. And he got minor frostbite on his feet. Sorry. Eyes watering. Oh, sorry about that. So yesterday, the big news was GM of the Raiders, Mike Mayock, came out and basically just said, AB's either all in or he's all out. He's got to make a decision. It was reported that after that, his agent came out and said that they have been working with the team, the league, and the players union on trying to find a solution to the helmet issue. So last year there was a certain number of helmets that were grandfathered in, but you had to change this year. I know Tom Brady has been the big name that's come up, where he's come out and said he hasn't liked having to make the change because like the last 4 Super Bowls that he's played in, he's worn the same helmet. The NFL is doing this for safety reasons. Helmets are rapidly advancing in technology to help prevent concussions or reduce concussions. I guess the model Antonio Brown uses hasn't been made for a decade, and he's just been forced to move on. Now, I saw yesterday he reported to practice, and then also it said he filed another grievance with the NFL. I saw that, and then today, John Gruden said he was at practice and he was wearing an improved helmet. So I guess maybe he finally figured this whole helmet thing out. A friend of mine told me that he thought it was just something that they've done for Hard Knocks. Felt that Hard Knocks came up to him and was like, "Hey, let's make things a little ridiculous." I don't quite think it was that. I wouldn't put it past the NFL or HBO for that. I personally think he just didn't want to be at practice. Also coupled with the fact that, I mean, he said it hurts his vision. I don't know, you get used to something. People don't like change. I guess he's one of those people. And so, now that he's finally at practice, it looks like he's going to be good to go week 1. I guess the feet are better. Obviously, his feet have become a back burner story with all the helmet issues. But, I mean, as long as his feet are fine, I expect him to be out there. I expect him to be the Antonio Brown we've come to know. Not as productive as the Pittsburgh Steeler Antonio Brown. You have not nearly as good offense in general. Now, they made some moves to help try and improve that offensive line. They brought in Trent Brown. Their offensive line, though, Pro Football Focus has rated as 26th coming into the season. They didn't really address O-line too much in the draft. The big deal was them having 3 first-round draft picks. They brought in defensive end Khalil Farrell. They brought in safety Jonathan Abrams, and then running back Josh Jacobs. They have plenty of offensive weapons. Antonio Brown, Tyrell Williams, Josh Jacobs at running back. Their offensive line will be an issue, kind of like the Jets. Offensive lines will really get you. And then Derek Carr had statistically one of his best seasons last year with John Gruden. It just didn't look good. I don't know if he'll make the jump in year 2. And John Gruden, has a real history of liking shitty, crappy quarterbacks. He won a Super Bowl with Rich Gannon. Now, Nathan Peterman, like to bring him up because statistically he's the worst quarterback ever. He threw 5 interceptions in 1/2 while playing for Buffalo. He is now with the Raiders, and John Gruden has had a lot of good things to say about him. He's flashed at least on some running plays in the preseason, and I think John Gruden has this quarterback whisperer reputation that he wants to live up to, and I think nothing would make him look like a quarterback whisperer more than getting Nathan Peterman to be a competent NFL quarterback. I can see him doing that, and I don't see that going well. I don't see much of anything going well for the Raiders. I don't think John Gruden should have left the ESPN booth. Now Monday Night Football casting is terrible. I don't think he was a good coach all that to begin with. Their defense was not great last year. They addressed that in the draft, but I still think it would be another year or 2 before they have the pieces in place to be winning in Oakland. That being said, I have the Raiders going 2-14. Not a great year for John Gruden, and I don't know. I don't know if they're going to stick it out 10 years with Gruden, but it's not going to be a good first 2. INTs are interceptions. Carr goes down. Peterman leads the NFLs in touchdowns. I can see him leading the NFL in interceptions. I don't know about touchdowns. Oh, and you also said that. I missed that. I'm sorry. No, I don't really have high hopes for the Raiders. Yeah, they should have stayed now. Yes, 2-14 for the Raiders. So my big thing with the Raiders, going a little Raiders rant here. I don't like John Gruden. John Gruden, I felt, won a Super Bowl in Tampa Bay on a team that was built by Tony Dungy. Tony Dungy just didn't get his contract re-up when he was in Tampa. Then Tony Dungy goes on to coach for the Colts, win a Super Bowl. John Gruden came over from Oakland to Tampa Bay, wins the Super Bowl. I think John Gruden's highly overrated. I don't think he was really a quarterback whisperer. I think he had quarterbacks that were game managers. And, in the late 90s, early 2000s, you can win a Super Bowl with a game manager and a great defense. The Tampa 2 defense was coined from that 90s defense in Tampa. I think he took over a team that was built by Tony Dungy. Tony Dungy just ran into the greatest show on turf with the LA Rams at the time. Lost in the playoffs, and Tampa Bay decided to move on. I think it worked out for all parties involved. Tampa Bay got their Super Bowl with Gruden. Tony Dungy goes on to be one of the best coaches of all time in Indianapolis. I don't know why. I've never been a fan of John Gruden. He's great, though, in the Monday Night Football booth. Please come back to Monday Night Football. Booger McFarlane is not good. Please, John, just accept that you're not a great football coach and come back to the booth. That's about all I have to say about that. Lack of oil. What are we talking about? A lack of oil? Read up. Raiders rant John Gruden. Oh, grinds my gears. Oh, yep. Yes, Booger McFarlane. I don't know if that's actually his name. I believe he's a former defensive lineman in the NFL. It was him. He was the guy in what was coined as the Booger Mobile on Monday Night Football. Was in that little cart that just followed the line of scrimmage when he had Jason Witten in the booth. Witten, who is no longer he's now playing in the NFL again. And what he said was it was hard to watch Zach Ertz break his record for most receptions from a tight end, all while being ridiculed about how bad he was in the booth. Now, I'm not saying it's an easy job. I'm not saying I can do the job. I'm just saying they weren't good at it. The crew before with John Gruden was really good. Now Booger's moving into the booth that Witten's gone. They're keeping the same play-by-play guy. I can't think of his name off the top of my head. The play-by-play guy is pretty good, though. It's just the color commentation is not great. Witten's your boy. Well, he's way better on the football field than he was in the booth. I hope even you can admit that. Yeah, he won't be on the sideline things anymore. They're moving him into the booth, which I think's an improvement. I don't know. I heard some reports that if you sat in like the first couple rows in a stadium and you're on the same side of the field as him, it really blocked your view. I heard at one point they put a flat screen TV on the back of it. I think at one point they moved to just like a clear plexiglass so you could kind of see through. I get what I feel like ESPN had a good idea. It was just poorly executed. Yeah, I think he would also agree he wasn't good in the booth, which is why he came back to the NFL. We'll probably talk about him next week when we break down the NFC. All right. On to the Denver Broncos. So the Broncos bring in quarterback Joe Flacco, a trade they made with the Ravens. Bring in Jawan James, offensive tackle. Kareem Jackson, cornerback. And Bryce Callahan, cornerback. They trade away starting quarterback last year, Case Keenum. They lost some pieces of the offensive line. Matt Paredes at center. Billy Turner at guard. And they lost cornerback Bradley Roby in free agency as well. John Elway is trying to take advantage of one of the best defenses in football. Just a couple years ago, the Broncos won a Super Bowl on the back of that defense. And he's almost trying to repeat what he did with bringing in Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco was a Super Bowl MVP. He won a Super Bowl with the Ravens in a similar situation where it was a dominant defense. He was a bit of a game manager. That was definitely Flacco's best season of his career. He was at that point maybe considered an elite quarterback. I think that's what he's trying to repeat here, while also developing a quarterback. He's drafted a quarterback, I believe, every year, similar to what Bill Belichick does, but Belichick already had his starting quarterback. Elway has not. I think the best quarterback move Elway has made besides bringing in Peyton Manning was not signing Brock Osweiler and letting the Texans waste $16 million on him, which ended up being the Browns wasting $16 million on him, but getting a second-round draft pick out of it. They made a coaching change in Denver. You got new head coach Vic Fangio, was the D coordinator for the Chicago Bears last season. He's been around the NFL for a long time. They brought in Rich Scagnarello as their offensive coordinator. Was the quarterback's coach last year with the 49ers in that Kyle Shanahan system. Then they bring in defensive coordinator Ed Dontel. Both these guys are first-time coordinators. Their D coordinator was a positions coach, the DB's coach with the Bears. Da Bears. Had to at least get it in. Yeah, just wait till we break down the Bears next week. There's gonna be a lot of Da Bears. Thanks. That one's rough. There's a lot of Italian sounding names that I feel like I just butchered real bad. So the Broncos season's really going to hinge on how well Joe Flacco can play. I don't think he played last year. He was fighting for his job and he knew it. He played pretty well up until the point where he got injured. I don't expect him to move mountains. He'll be okay. I think he'll be good for Drew Lock to sit behind for a year. Quarterback they drafted here in the second round. I think this may finally be the answer for them. Him sitting will definitely help. He's looked decent so far in the preseason. But yeah, definitely sitting a year behind Joe Flacco will help. Last year they had undrafted rookie free agent Phillip Lindsay burst onto the scene at running back, all while at the same time they had drafted Royce Freeman, a running back, in the third round. Now Freeman kind of got thrown to the wayside due to some early season injuries, and Lindsay, filled in admirably. I'm sorry, I can't talk right now apparently. He filled in well. He did a good job. Now I think both Freeman and Lindsay, I think it's going to be a real running back by committee. Now with their offensive coordinator, he comes from that Kyle Shanahan system. Now everyone loves to point out the Kyle Shanahan system when he was in Atlanta, when he had Devonta Freeman and Tevin Coleman. He loved to use two running backs. In San Francisco, he's kind of done the same thing, although he's run into a lot of injury issues and hasn't been able to really use that two-back combo because he hasn't had two healthy ones. They added, well, they didn't really add any offensive weapons in the offseason, but you have, Emmanuel Sanders played last night in their preseason game. He's coming off his Achilles tear that happened 8 months and 14 days ago. It seems like a very accelerated timeline for that Achilles tear. But he played seemed like he looked good. Sounds like he's going to be ready week 1. I think that could be a big help, a veteran presence in that for the wide receivers. They got Cortland Sutton and Deshaun Hamilton, both going into their second year, both hoping to make that year 2 jump and stand out. I think Cortland Sutton has a better chance of that. He's more of a deep threat guy, and Joe Flacco did well last year early on with John Brown throwing the deep ball. That is one thing Joe Flacco is good at. He's a good deep ball thrower. I think that could lead to a real breakout season for Cortland Sutton. One offensive weapon they did bring in is in the first round they drafted tight end Noah Fant. I don't expect much of a big year from Fant in year 1. Rookie tight ends typically don't. That being said, I know Fant is he's a better blocking tight end than most. I know sometimes that's an issue you have with tight ends because you don't want just a pass-catching tight end out there. You want a guy that can also block. You know, their defense is going to be pretty consistent. I think they'll be good. You bring in a defensive head coach. The problem's going to rely on that offense. They'll be able to run the ball. I think Joe Flacco will kind of hold them back a little bit. I think this is really a year where you're just waiting and hoping that Drew Lock's the guy. I could see mid-season there being calls to have Drew Lock start. I don't think that would be wise, but I don't run an NFL franchise. I have the Broncos going 6-10 this year. Not terrible. Obviously not what they're looking for. I know bringing in Joe Flacco, they're hoping they can maybe compete for the division, which is rough when you got the Chiefs and Chargers in your division.